agenda approval of the minutes of 10/25/12, mail, chief operation report, and other business as found necessary. A motion on the approval.
Motion. Second.
All in favor? Motion on approval of the minutes of 10/25/12,
So moved. Second.
all in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
Have our mail. None made. None on the mail. We will go to chief operation report.
Okay, just snippets of some pictures as I'm going through the reports, so some things make sense. And I just sort of summarized the past few months into the biggest things. I'll just run through them quickly for you. I received an application for a sewer allocation, but the individual who signed and submitted the paperwork isn't actually the current owner, they are a potential owner. So I actually called the owner and asked them about it, and they confirmed that they would really like the individual to purchase the property and then obtain allocation of their own name, which makes perfect sense. The owner should be the one. I did inform the applicant, they seem to understand, and they'll reapply with the property transfer. And the state of Vermont has recognized that their current facility classification system was established in 1985. It really needs to be revised. Right now, facility classification is determined mainly on the incoming flow rate. You know, we have our class 1, class 2, class 3, we're a class 2 at present. The state realizes that the scope of the facility's infrastructure and the number of computer interfaces also need to be taken into consideration at this time and age. So I have paperwork, it needs to be completed by the middle of March, so I'll take care of that. But I think they're gonna see with the facility, the 23 pump stations, the miles of gravity force mains, and the 691 pump users that, you know, will probably be up for reconsideration on that. The draft priority and planning list for the state funding has been issued. Nelson went ahead and approved the application. A&A does it every year for us. And the application, yeah, was completed, and just in hopes that we would be eligible for funding for future sewer extensions. And right now, we're number 28 on the draft list for sewer extensions on Snake Hill Road, Swallow Hill Road, and Barber's Pond Road. And anticipated funding, it looks like on the list would be 2017, 2018. And of course, once the approved list is out, and it may be a possibility that we could move forward with this, of course, A&E would come like they've done in years
Could you ask
past.
them to send you a list because it shows the points of pollution, the points?
The draft list is right there.
Just like to see what the points are.
December 27th, a beeping noise in the main PLC computer cabinet led us to discover that the batteries in the UPS battery backup unit for the plant's computer system went bad. So we found a battery match at Granger. The only way to replace the batteries in the UPS was shut the whole plant down. So that was an interesting afternoon. But what we did was just planned it right at the right time, so there was no blowers running, we turned off any non-essentials, and we actually shut down the plant, replaced the batteries in the UPS, plugged everything back in, turned everything back on, and thank you, everything came back up beautifully. But the main power source runs through the UPS, just like you would plug in your laptop. If you were to unplug your UPS, you would unplug the laptop. So I wrote up a how-to in case this ever happens again, in case I'm not here or whatever. It's right on the case. These are the steps you need to take so that this goes smoothly.
Good.
Okay, let's see.
There's no way around that at this
There
point.
isn't. There is no way around that. It was scary.
Yeah.
But we made it through it. We lost heat in the main control building back in November, right here. It was cold, and I traced the electronic schematics back to the computer unit. It seemed fine. So I called the programmers, and she came out for free, and it's almost like some other people have been experiencing the same thing. She went click, 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 there it is, you're all fixed. So very easy fix, and free, so that worked too. Yeah, free is good. We did a full prep at the pump stations. This is going back again for the Hurricane Sandy. We just made sure all the backup emergency fuel sources were full, and we were prepared for the worst, and we were spared this time, so yay. All the pipes and pumps were painted in the lower headworks. There's a picture of that. We had to fabricate a smaller grease removal basket to use at the school, The one I already fabricated was just too big, and there was a good amount of floating grease in there that needed to be removed for disturbs of the floats or whatever. We adjusted the chemical feed systems accordingly through the winter months, and we're doing really well on chemical usage, feeling really good about that. We experienced a pump fail alarm at PV2, a result of a faulty relay in the RTU cabinet, and this happened before. I keep them on hand. So we were able to just replace that out real quick, get that pump right back online. The radio at PC1 was intermittently not working. That would be the radio, communicating back with the plant on a constant basis. And I looked into the cost of replacing one, and they're over $1,000. So then we were talking about it and said, don't we still have those radios we pulled from PC3 to PC4 when we did the upgrade, remember the tower?
Yep.
Took one of those, plunked it in, it's been working great ever since. So that's good. Let's see, every time we take apart a suction line at our small stations, which we do a lot because we have to get to the flappers and clean them and replace them on a regular basis, they never brace the suction line that goes into the wet well. It's just braced by being bolted to the next part, to the next part, to the next part. So Carl had the idea of taking some scrap and fabricating some pipe supports. So he fabricated pipe supports out of scrap that we, got for free here and there. And we've begun now supporting the pipes, because before, every time we take apart that suction line, we have to chain wrap. And then we have to work around the chain with the wrenches, and so yeah, we had to take apart one with the new pipe holders, and the other day, it was great, it was fantastic. We lost another grinder station, and right before Christmas, it was the other one that got zapped. Remember the first one we had to replace? Right next to Roscoe's garage. It got zapped by really bad lightning right after Hurricane Irene. This is the other one. And I think it probably was just a matter of time. We're probably lucky we got another 9 months out of that. So, got our hands on a new one within a couple of days. Reinstalled it, no problems. And a shout out, thanks to Mary Campbell and John Roscoe for giving me a call. Because that's the only way I know anything's wrong on those, is if someone gives me a call. We know. And we had a couple snowstorms, of course, required us to be out plowing and shoveling, cleaning up, no problems, and the snow plow frame was painted between the storms, so it's good. Low temp alarm to PC2 right before the new year. The motor and that heater burned up. Got our hands on one, replaced it. Same thing with the one downstairs in the gallery, got our hands on it, replaced it. New suction flapper at PC4, and the rags at PC1, I think that's one of those pictures. The rags were so packed that when we took the bolts out and released the pipe, it stayed there. It wouldn't come off by itself. We had to pry it off because the rags were so massive in that pipe. It's again a shout out, I'll tell you every time, please only flush.
And this is our,
My nephew calls it the 3 P's in the C. Pee, poop, puke, and cereal. I mean, I had to inquire about the cereal one, but yeah, just really, don't flush things that shouldn't be flushed, because really, that's what happens. And
but this is our power from
this is the school.
Oh,
This is the school,
alright.
PC1.
Should we send maybe just a reminder letter again to them, just for?
It goes out with the bills, every bill that Linda generates. It's just, I guess, to make you more aware, if you actually see it.
Being with the bill, I think people get a habit of just seeing it there and don't read it, like you do with a lot of mail you get. Maybe
Good
It's
reminder.
actually going to the SVSU, so it's not even going.
That was probably, that was
wonder
quite
if we should
impressive.
ship one to the office of the school, just to put them on alert. It may not amount to anything, but it's a,
Well, it's actually, that station, I mean, isn't just the school, that station receives everything north. So everything north of that station,
could have combined.
Royal Pine, all the way back down to that station goes there, so I don't think I wouldn't say it's just the school, but it's the school's station, we call it the school station. Cause it's
Yeah, no
location.
way to do the other group as a group, okay.
Yeah, just kinda get the word out if anyone talks about it. Let's see, 2 whole house backup sewer service calls.
Just,
Oh, yep.
is there a way of, when you send this message up, you send out, even if it's just a small picture, showing what the problems is, give them a picture. Sometimes the words don't do it, but the pictures will. Say, this is what occurs, please do not.
Linda, that would probably be a question for you, would that be something to put in the bills, or?
It would have to be an insert.
Yeah, that's all. Somebody would have to make the insert with the little picture.
Maybe we can talk about that and,
I'm just thinking, you know, people,
oh, wait.
like Steve says, they read these things and they get them so repetitive, they don't think any, but if they see something that's,
School, park owners, stuff like that where you send it to the park owner.
yeah.
You know, you might get a little response or a little action from them.
Even when I talk about it, you can't imagine it, it would actually be like, oh, wow,
I mean,
like
I'd-
that,
I'd
it is
rather-
powerful.
I'd rather set the stage and letting them know that we've given them warning in case in years to come, we have to do something more serious. That we can say we've laid the groundwork on, geez, we've told you there's been issues, asked you to work with us, now we've got bad issues.
And it's
and we have to
communication,
do something different.
it is finding the right mode of communication, I think, probably, yeah. So, yeah, let's think about that, what would be the best way to get that out and include a picture, let them see.
Because most of these places, this is a definite benefit for them. They wouldn't be existing well without it, so it's a shame to hamper it
And
anyway.
you're dealing with generations that are more in the pictures than they have words, because their spelling is shorted.
You're right.
It's what they look at.
You're right. Two whole house were backup calls. One was due to frozen pipes under the home. It was during that week of sub-zero temperatures that we had. Our cleaner was clean. And the second, our cleaner was not clean. It was a plugged house service line, and we were able to get rid of it with the jetter and make it pretty quick work of it. The motor belts were adjusted to MP3. We've also been working on doing, replacing some worn gaskets, and, you know, when we take apart those suction lines at some of these stations, often, you know, the gaskets get worn. We're making them though, not buying them. And just monitor the temperature throughout the winter months, adjusted the heat stations, so we're trying to save it on the electricity. A couple carbon filter vents around towns. Force main pipelines are painted NP4. And that's really just a quick summary of the past few months, the biggest things, and I'm gonna pass it on to Ron. He had asked about the sewer decommissioning policy back in October and wanted me to do some research on that, and I put together a little email and sent it out, and you guys have had a chance to look through that and just make a decision on what you would like to do with that policy.
With discussion on this, I would assume that the way we were set up, 2015 was a guesstimate on the time that everything would be completed, and our lapse time of the grant money for, money required that we got to do these
Right.
systems with, would be the time span that we needed. Now, in noticing that Royal Pine Villa was the last one completed, and their time is up in 2014.
Right,
That we probably could move that back a year,
right.
but probably should make it a policy for everything in that, not just one particular item, so we have a goal of 1 year,
It
so
would
we
be a
don't have
policy that-
spastic around
Is the whole, would
Different
it be the
areas,
whole
the
town?
whole sewer system, 2013.
Versus, do you wanna make it some sort of formal written policy, or
Oh, it
you
is.
just a motion?
I already have the formal written policy. It was, and of course, you know, we're going back 3 years, you guys haven't
Yeah.
seen it for a while, but yeah, I have a formal policy
That's
in
what I said,
place.
that's what we did
You
last year.
approved it, but not to be effective until.
Yeah,
So you would wanna change the effective date.
Right, that would be the only
Would
thing
be
we
your
change would be
motion.
the date.
Right.
Make a motion to change the date on it.
okay. So are we looking to do that tonight, or did the board wanna,
I don't think there's anything to talk about,
I
because
say it's
we
pretty
have,
obvious, you got a date?
it's a 5-year waiting period on the mobile home parks. And, Josh, you did have a good point, it was aligned to this particular one that I was talking about. So it isn't like taking out a kitchen, there is a line. And I'm perfectly happy, I think everybody else would be happy with going by the 5-year waiting period would be over on February 3rd, so I think that should be when it's over. That's on my phone.
I'll make a motion that we change the date to February 3rd, 2014.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. I have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the last thing that I had, we just crunched our draft budget like we do every February. You guys are just seeing it tonight for the first time, so I'm not expecting any motions or anything. You know, things might still change in the next month, depending on bills we get in or whatever. Your comments, questions, concerns?
Your total percentage increase was?
1% on the bottom line, and that's the first increase we've had for 2 years with this budget as presented.
Where would, if I was to look at this by line, where would the biggest increase be?
I'm not sure if it's the biggest increase, Nelson, more than the biggest
I'm talking percent.
decrease in the revenue, I think,
Okay.
made the difference.
Oh, okay, so it's a revenue issue, not a,
It was a little bit of a revenue adjustment on how the delinquent interest and fees were being billed out and how they were being accounted for in balance on the administrative side. They need to equal, and we weren't doing that. We had the big number in the revenue and a very small number in the expenses. So once we made that adjustment, that really reduced revenue. I was able to balance that because my health insurance went down quite a bit, and that balanced that out quite well. So really, we're looking good at the bottom line. It's
Okay.
overall a $1,500 increase in the bottom line in 2 years.
okay, so when you're saying the increase is 1%, when you look at the budget, and reality, there's a shift between some of the revenue and the other.
Really, that's, yeah. The other ones are fairly minor. I don't think anything's gonna jump out at you and surprise you in any way. Just things that are out of my control. I did get a notification that the sludge treatment will go up. I'm gonna ask for the board's permission to increase our rates here as well, so that we stay current with the other communities probably next month. The trash rate went up, and they gave me a paperwork on that. But we're doing great on fuel, so I think we're gonna have a credit again. It's actually went down a little bit of that, anticipating we're gonna have a credit. And chemicals, we're doing really great on chemicals, and I didn't have an increase this year, so I got to go down a little bit on that.
Had a couple of good winners.
We did.
Well,
And,
I'd like to compliment you and Carl and Jeff. I think you guys are doing
well,
a
thank you.
tremendous job and paying very close
Thank
attention
you,
to the operations down here and keeping them in line, so
thank you, I appreciate
you
that.
deserve a pat on the
I
back.
will spread that to the other guys, because they
We do
definitely,
thank you for that.
definitely invaluable.
The whole thing's working well, and
Yes.
that shows
Thank you.
teamwork working together.
That's it for me, I'm done, I'm sorry.
That's the chief operator's report.
Yes.
Is there any other business before us from the board?
I'd like to go back to that sewer decommission thing for a second,
Okay,
because we're gonna think about this like if it was a big amount in mobile home parks,
right,
and revisit this
yes.
so that we don't get dumped on
That's a good point,
with
that
a
we,
whole bunch of disconnections at once.
we put that in the minutes, Linda, that we need to revisit
Should-
the number of EUs we allow to be
We will allow-
reduced. That's
In a big establishment, but we don't.
considering, like Steve said, with how much we have invested.
Well, let me ask that question differently, because it doesn't make any difference if it's one big established, let go of 10, or if you got 10 separate ones going away, it'll have the same impact.
Any owner,
So the real question I think you gotta ask is, should you be setting the limit of decommissions per year?
per year, per owner,
Well,
not specifying
No,
anybody.
Not anybody.
Right, per anybody, per,
So in other words, we'll allow 5 a year or 10 a year,
regardless where they are.
because otherwise you could have
Oh.
20 individuals,
Right.
and not necessarily the park let go of 20, but you could have 20 individuals. That says, I'm decommissioning this one.
My only concern what if a park owner did put in, or anybody did put in, before, say, the limit of 5, and the one person who just had the extra line didn't get their application in first.
They'll
and
get it
then
the next year. You can prioritize it for the next
Okay.
year.
I mean, that would be,
And the other exception would be if there is a fire or emergency, they can abate it.
that would go
Come
through
before
abatement
us.
though,
Yeah,
not
that's
here.
a total different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they-
Well, I was only concerned on the trailer parks for one reason, that's a business. These other things, relate to a lot more circumstances.
Yeah, I
House
think,
could burn down, guy could have a little shack, is a tenant house or something, he wants to do away with it, or something like that.
I think,
That's a
yeah,
totally different issue than worrying about, cause I don't foresee a whole bunch of decommissioning anywhere except for in the mobile home parks, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe. I mean, I'm not sure.
and I agree with that, but it doesn't, there's no harm in setting some limits on what you expect. And again, the board at any time can change their policy. It's not something that's set in stone when it comes to this. But if the public knows that you're looking at X, they can plan accordingly.
and
that
get some
makes a big-
input too from the people that you talk to, what would they rather see, like a yearly on an owner or a yearly?
I think anyone that has a fire or any other major type failure of their structure goes through the rebate process through the Board of Civil
Through
Authority.
you, right.
So those people, I wouldn't count as decommissions.
Oh, no, cause that's not permanent.
Total separate.
What I would count is the people that it says, I'm no longer
We're
gonna use
cutting
it,
the
it's
line,
gone.
we're cutting the line.
Yeah. You know, take me, where I've been paying for one, and I haven't really used the thing for how many years?
Yeah.
Many years. I could all of a sudden decide, hey, I don't want that, I want it decommissioned. I come in and say, I want it decommissioned, and it's gone. I just stop making that monthly payment. And there could be a lot of people just like me out there that aren't renting the place at the moment, that all of a sudden decides, wow, I wanna save that $400 a year. Let's decommission that, and someday I'll come back and pay whatever the price is.
But, and we've had people do that too, so, right, when it comes to apartment, that's different from just that physical once you do that, I mean, you're talking
And we have,
plans,
and we
that's
have a
digging.
lot of the apartments in our
Right.
villages, so
Right.
it's not just a few, so when you talk about rentals and mobile homes and.
See, that's a different can of worms as far as I'm concerned, because it's, nobody knows whether that apartment is occupied or not unless you go in there.
Right.
But if you take the building down, or you take you've got a mobile home in your backyard, you take it down, it's gone, it's
And
out.
you never are
So
gonna have
that
it.
person should get, be able to decommission, cause it's gone.
And I think that's where we're going, was how do we allow that
As
to
far
happen
as
and
how
what
many
time
years.
frame, and now how many a year?
We can put a number on
Yeah,
it.
the worst case,
Yeah.
what you're looking at is if somebody really is doing it, unless you have large amounts, but if, like I said, if you put it at 5 or 10 or whatever you wanted it, that's what you gotta look at. Are you gonna have
How
10
does that
in 1
affect
year,
the
or are you
budget?
gonna have
Because
20?
that will affect everyone else.
Well, and you do that over a period of time, you might have some new ones coming in, like we've got people applying.
Yeah.
So it might offset it, but if you go and just make it a blanket.
Yeah, I just started thinking about that, going, ooh, yeah, we might wanna consider that, but yeah, I think there's different ways to do it.
Yeah, I think probably with all this thought, maybe on our next meeting, we can put this on the agenda as we thought about it and what we think the number would be reasonable to work along with. I've got one in my head, but then again, doing more thought on it may change. So, we're just discussing this
Just
tonight.
discussing it tonight,
You know, the
yeah.
next meeting might be a nice time.
I wanna do some of the math for what it means if 10's gone or 2 or, there's a
Absolutely.
big difference in how it works.
And our budget's so small,
Yeah,
and
it
so
changes-
tight,
changes the
it
user's fee.
it changes it dramatically with not
Yeah,
very
you
many,
could see a 2 or 3% increase
You
with very
could.
few.
very easily.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta worry about that. Okay.
That's it, I guess,
I see it just
I
as
don't have
one
any.
EU.
1,500, how many
You see
E's?
When you lose
Think of
one,
it that way,
you lose
1,500 is 1%, so that doesn't take very many
Yeah,
reuse.
well, that's why that's why I said you need to think about what that magic
You don't
number is.
want the mull
But
it
that
over.
doesn't, I guess the other thing you do when you set the limit, you make the policy, you could set it so that if somebody does apply that year, if their priority, you give them a priority number where they might be the first the next year because they didn't make it that year. You'd set up a list, so the person,
That's a
worst
good
case you
thought.
have to worry about is a year.
That's a good thought.
But you need to think about how you wanna do it.
That's a
and
very
do it.
good thought, yeah, so that they would,
Because
they
it
would
was-
know they would know in their mind that.
Yeah, it wasn't like they were turned down and they weren't ever gonna get it.
Cause we certainly can't.
Or they get the priority, they're in the queue, they know they're in the queue.
And they know when their turn will come, so.
I don't think you'd find a lot of people, but on the same token, we don't need to get hit with 1 year hit.
You got it.
set.
Okay,
I make a motion, we adjourn.
That sounds like a plan, second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
All right, so was that where the
Yeah,
doors on?
yeah.